What if the 1970s most explosive films never made the headlines? Tonight, we rip the tape off 15 buried reels, stories hotter than disco and sharper than a switchblade, forgotten by ticket buyers, worshipped by die-hard cinephiles. Dim the lights, cue the projector, and keep your pulse steady. These hidden gems are about to hijack your movie night. Waken Fright, 1971. Picture a man stepping off a dusty train in the middle of nowhere, certain he'll be sipping cocktails at the coast within 48 hours. Instead, schoolteacher John Grant plunges headfirst into the Yaba, a scorched outback town where booze flows like water and every handshake feels like a trap. Director Ted Kotcheff shot on location in Broken Hill at the peak of an Australian summer. Temperatures routinely hit 113 degrees Fahrenheit, forcing the camera crew to wrap Panavision lenses in wet towels so the grease wouldn't melt. Donald Pleasance, all wild eyes and sly grins, improvised many of his infamous lines, keeping castmates permanently off balance. The production scraped by on an Australian $800,000 budget, paid for with a patchwork of state grants and UK television money. Despite rave reviews at Cannes, its domestic release fizzled, grossing barely 50,000 Australian dollars. Worse, the original negative was lost in transit, and for decades the picture survived only in ragged 16mm prints smuggled between university film societies. In 2004, a lone 35mm copy surfaced at a Pittsburgh warehouse. A painstaking 4K restoration followed, and when Martin Scorsese hosted the 2009 New York Film Festival screening, jaws clenched in collective dread. Critics now hail Waken Fright as the missing link between Straw Dogs and Deliverance, an unsparing portrait of toxic fraternity, gambling addiction, and the thin veneer separating civilization from savagery. The infamous kangaroo hunt sequence, filmed under government supervision during an actual cull, still splits audiences between admiration and outrage. But make no mistake, once that feverish third act kicks in, you feel the outback dust in your lungs. Harold and Maude, 1971. If death had a sense of humor, it would look exactly like Harold and Maude. Meet Harold Chasen, a teenager who stages elaborate fake suicides just to watch his mother's monocle quiver. Enter Maude Ruth Gordon, a 79-year-old whirlwind who steals cars because they're fun and handcrafts sculptures from stolen street signs. Screenwriter Colin Higgins spun the script from UCLA grad school daydreams. Paramount execs balked at its age gap romance. But director Hal Ashby, fresh off editing in the heat of the night, fought for every irreverent gag. Filmed in 38 days around the fog-drenched San Francisco Bay, Ashby kept the vibe loose by blasting Cat Stevens demos on set. Gordon danced between takes, court practiced corpse-like stillness in a coffin prop. Total budget, a modest $1.3 million. When it opened, critics were baffled. Variety called it grotesque. Box office crawled to $520,000 in its first run, and Paramount quietly yanked advertising. Yet, college towns embraced its dark whimsy. Midnight screenings grew rowdier each week, audience members reciting Maude's "Go out and love some more" mantra in unison. By 1983, the film turned profitable, ultimately grossing over $25 million and launching an ecosystem of derivatives. A Broadway musical, a Japanese stage adaptation, and multiple French remakes. In 1997, the American Film Institute placed Maude among cinema's top 10 female heroes, citing her life-affirming anarchy. Cat Stevens soundtrack songs, Don't Be Shy, If You Want to Sing Out, still staple every Bohemian mixtape. And get this, filmmakers Wes Anderson and Tim Burton both listed as a foundational influence on their off-kilter romance aesthetics. The Conversation, 1974. Between the Corleone wedding montage and Michael's Sicilian exile, Francis Ford Coppola wedged a different obsession, eavesdropping. The Conversation drops us inside the meticulous world of Harry Call, a trenchcoat surveillance expert who values privacy more than oxygen. Coppola conceived the script in 1966 after reading about acoustic spy tech, but Hollywood dismissed the premise. Only after The Godfather minted gold did Paramount cut a $1.6 million check. Production unfolded largely in San Francisco's Union Square, where cinematographer Bill Butler concealed long Panavision lenses behind windows and florist carts, capturing real pedestrians unaware. Sound designer Walter Murch pioneered triple-track mixing. He recorded ambient city noise, then layered it with whispered dialogue and analog tape hiss, literally sculpting paranoia. The park bench sequence took 3 days to choreograph, so Hackman's mumbling cadence synced with camera zooms. Editing ran a grueling 11 months. Coppola kept inserting Watergate headlines, convinced audiences would need real-world anchors. Box office returns were respectable $4.4 million domestic, but modest beside The Godfather Part 2. Yet the film swept Cannes, snagging the Palme d'Or over Fellini's Amarcord. Today it resonates as eerily prophetic. The NSA Prism leaks, targeted phone mics, Harry Call's analog demons became our digital reality. Tech giants screen it for new security hires. Trent Reznor cites its tape loops as inspiration for 9 Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral. And check the Easter egg. In Star Wars Episode 2, Lucas named a Jedi Coleman Trebor, an anagram tribute to Call's existential dread. Badlands, 1973. Imagine Bonnie and Clyde filtered through a poet's telescope. Terrence Malick's Badlands chronicles Kit Martin Sheen, a trash collector drifter, and Holly, Sissy Spacek, a 15-year-old baton twirler, as they carve a bloody zigzag across 1950s Dakota plains. Malick, a former philosophy professor, financed the shoot with $300,000 scraped from investor friends and sold his Austin, Texas house. Principal photography unfolded guerrilla style. The crew drove 2 station wagons stuffed with Panavision gear, sometimes outrunning real state troopers alerted by blank fire on location. Spacek later recalled that Malick encouraged her to write diary pages in character. Many voiceover lines come verbatim from those scribbles, lending the film its unsettlingly naive perspective. Meanwhile, Sheen performed his tree limb gymnastics without stunt doubles, slicing his hand and refusing stitches to preserve continuity. Composer George Tipton arranged Carl Orff's Gassenhauer theme as a xylophone lullaby, now synonymous with wistful menace in later films like True Romance. Initial reviews praised the imagery, but decried the detachment. A-list critic Pauline Kael accused Malick of deadpan moralism. Box office tallied a paltry $2.3 million, but European festival juries swooned. The British Film Institute slotted Badlands into its all-time top 50 poll. Decades later, Bruce Springsteen cited Kit's denim cool for the album Nebraska, and director David Gordon Green calls it his cinematic North Star. In 2011, the National Film Registry preserved it for its lyrical depiction of violence and Americana. Perhaps the film's most haunting legacy is its ambiguity. Kit's crimes feel random, his grin disarming, Holly's narration disturbingly calm. Did Malick intend a critique of celebrity killers or a lament for lost innocence? The director refuses to explain, fueling myths. Picnic at Hanging Rock, 1975. Valentine's Day, 1900. Corseted schoolgirls ascend an ancient volcanic outcrop, then drift into the ether without a scream. Peter Weir's Picnic at Hanging Rock merges Gothic mystery with Impressionist painting. The director deployed a focal diffusion filter wrapped in women's stockings to halo the sunlight, transforming Australia's Macedon ranges into a waking dream. The budget crept to $440,000 Australian dollars, partly bankrolled by the newly formed South Australian Film Corporation, eager to showcase local talent. Production quirks. Actress Anne-Louise Lambert. Miranda was instructed to glide, never stomp, so Weir installed felt pads in her shoes. Cast members practiced Victorian etiquette, learning to curtsy between takes. No official script ending existed. The final pages were blank, forcing actors to intuit motivations during the last, lingering shots of creaking cicadas. Composer Bruce Smeaton wove Romanian pan flute with a Moog synthesizer, the dissonance conjuring both pastoral beauty and cosmic dread. Released domestically to strong word of mouth, the film earned $5 million Australian dollars worldwide, an impressive haul for a niche period piece. Yet Americans obsessed over the unsolved riddle. Was it based on a true story? Bookshops reported surging sales of Joan Lindsay's source novel. Tourist buses clogged the real Hanging Rock, where locals sold Miranda Lives t-shirts. Quentin Tarantino and Sofia Coppola cite the film's eerie femininity as influence, echoed in The Virgin Suicides and The Beguiled. Academic journals still debate colonial guilt and repressed sexuality within its porous plotting. The 2018 miniseries remake proved the mythology undimmed, but nothing rivals the original's dissolve shots of ants crawling across a pocket watch. Time literally consumed by nature. Sorcerer, 1977. Long before CGI explosions, William Friedkin hauled his crew into the Dominican Republic's steaming jungles to remake Henri-Georges Clouzot's The Wages of Fear. Retitled Sorcerer, after one of the two rickety dynamite-laden trucks, the film follows four expatriate criminals, Roy Scheider, Bruno Kremer, Amidou, Francisco Rabal, as they transport unstable nitro across 200 miles of mudslides, collapsing rope bridges, and guerrilla crossfire. Originally budgeted at $8 million, costs ballooned to $22 million when Friedkin demanded a real bridge be built over a raging river, then rebuilt twice after floods washed it away. Crew malaria infections became routine. Friedkin himself battled a near-fatal bout. Cinematographer Dick Bush quit after clashing over lighting a thunderstorm. Owen Roizman replaced him mid-shoot. The iconic swamp bridge scene required 26 days and thousands of gallons of pumped water. Scheider performed the hair-raising crawl across teetering planks, while genuine 40-pound crates of prop explosives dangled inches away. Tangerine Dream's synth score, recorded before filming finished, pulsed through amplifiers on set to keep adrenaline high. Released 1 month after Star Wars, Sorcerer suffered catastrophic timing. Audiences craved light-hearted space fantasy, not existential sweat baths. Domestic gross stalled at $9 million. Friedkin's Hollywood cachet evaporated overnight. Yet directors like Christopher Nolan, Catherine Bigelow, and Paul Thomas Anderson now hail it as a masterclass in tension. A 2014 4K restoration toured worldwide, and Letterboxd rankings skyrocketed. Listen for the subtle motif. Each anti-hero's backstory is introduced with a distinct color scheme: New Jersey grayscale, Veracruz sepia, Jerusalem ochre, Paris cobalt, then all washed into jungle green, symbolizing moral equalization. No happy endings here. The final hallucinatory dissolve of Scheider's blood-spattered face into passing headlights remains one of the decade's bleakest images. So, want a break from relentless dread? Too bad, because our next film slips straight into identity-melting dreams. Three Women, 1977. Robert Altman awoke from a vivid dream, scribbled down "woman becomes another woman" in his notebook, and started rolling cameras 6 weeks later. Three women float in that same liminal hush, following Millie, a babbling manicurist desperate for attention, Pinky as Sissy Spacek, her shy roommate, and Willie as Janice Rule, a pregnant muralist who paints purple mermaids on pool bottoms. Shot in the Mojave Desert town of Desert Hot Springs, Altman kept the script fluid. Each morning he handed pages rewritten overnight, letting the actress's subconscious drive the arc. Duvall mined personal diary entries for Millie's monologues about honey mustard chicken livers, while Spacek rode roller skates off camera to emulate Pinky's childlike gait. Cinematographer Charles Rosher Jr. bathed interiors in sodium vapor yellows, reflecting Altman's request for dreamy dusk even at noon. Budget: $1.5 million, trimmed by Altman recruiting locals as extras and using his own car for Millie's infamous yellow Pinto. Test audiences left theaters whispering, "I don't get it." But Cannes judges felt the trance. Duvall won Best Actress, and the film snagged a National Society of Film Critics award. Over decades, Three Women became a secret handshake among cinephiles. David Lynch credits its identity slippage for Mulholland Drive's DNA. Mark Frost admits Twin Peaks borrowed its spectral desert color palette. Academic papers analyze its Jungian shadow motifs and the uncanny doubling of birth dates. A recent 4K Criterion release revealed hidden details. Willie's mural manifests bruises mirroring Pinky's hospital injuries, hinting that identities blend long before the explicit swap. By the end, the trio forms a single psyche: mother, maiden, crone, around a simmering pot of chili. Feeling your own self flicker in the mirror yet? Keep those nerves taut. Our next pick straps on a silver helmet and sets the music biz ablaze. Phantom of the Paradise, 1974. Take one tragic phantom, one devilish record producer, and a dash of hallucinogenic glam rock. Shake hard, and you get Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, a genre mash that still defies categorization. Winslow Leach pens a rock cantata. Swindler Swan, as Paul Williams steals it, mutilates Winslow's face in a record press accident, and rebrands the composer as a silver-helmeted freak haunting the Paradise Concert Hall. De Palma financed the $1.3 million production, partly through back-end deals, promising Williams royalties on every soundtrack copy sold. Smart move, considering songs like Somebody Super Like You became cult karaoke staples. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. The neon Bird of Paradise sign short-circuited and set drapes ablaze mid-shoot. De Palma's trademark split screen of the bomb-rigged performance required 36 synchronized cues, pyro triggers, camera cranes, audience extras, rehearsed like a Broadway opening. Jessica Harper, only 24, performed her own vocals, haunting the studio with after-hours reverb tests that producers secretly recorded for final mix layering. The movie bombed nearly everywhere. Domestic gross, $180,000. Reviews labeling it too weird, too loud. Except Winnipeg. The Canadian city embraced it for 52 consecutive weeks, sparking annual Phantompalooza conventions that still sell out. Subsequent reissues revealed its clairvoyant satire. Swan's contract actually states, "The press shall say what I tell them to say." Prescient commentary on corporate music spin. Daft Punk's chrome helmets? They cite Winslow as inspiration, even appearing alongside Paul Williams in Random Access Memories liner notes. In 2019, Guillermo del Toro screened it for his cast during Nightmare Alley prep, praising its operatic cynicism. Critics now highlight De Palma's dizzying camera work as proto-MTV grammar, decades before music videos codified rapid zooms and fish-eye distortions. Ready to trek from glam stages to Amazonian rapids? Strap in. The jungle fever of Herzog awaits. Aguirre, The Wrath of God, 1972. No filmmaker courts disaster like Werner Herzog, and Aguirre is his feverish ballad of doomed ambition. Inspired by historical conquistador Lope de Aguirre, Klaus Kinski dons battered armor and a perpetual snarl as he leads a mutinous search for El Dorado down the Amazon. Legend says Herzog wrote the script in 2 days atop a Munich bus, but actual production demanded hauling a 35-person crew, a parrot, and a monkey troupe through Peru's rainforest, all for $370,000. Kinski's volcanic temper exploded nightly. During one flare-up, he threatened to quit. Herzog brandished a loaded Winchester rifle, vowing to shoot Kinski first and himself second. Yet that manic energy seeps into every frame. Watch Kinski's one-take riverbank rant, veins bulging like jungle vines. Cinematographer Thomas Mausch strapped a 16mm Arriflex to a raft made of banana trunks, capturing hypnotic drifting shots while piranhas nipped at their ankles. There's no musical underscore, just Popol Vuh's ethereal choral drones, recorded at a Bavarian church and played back on set to infuse scenes with ecclesiastical dread. German distributors initially marketed it as a traditional adventure, confusing audiences. Domestic receipts limped under 1 million Deutsche Marks. But American art houses championed it in 1977, pairing it with surreal midnight fare like a razorhead. Influences echo across cinema. Apocalypse Now cribbed its slowboat madness, and Terrence Malick calls it pure cinematic scripture. Fun trivia. The decapitated head that keeps speaking in the finale was a practical effect using a hidden snorkel. The actor held his breath for 45 seconds. Herzog later claimed the jungle co-directed the film, fitting since Storms twice rewrote shooting schedules. By the time the raft circles in claustrophobic loops, Kinski's stare pierces through celluloid into your skull. Care for a palate cleanser? Too late. Philip Marlowe's cynical Los Angeles is up next. The Long Goodbye, 1973. Raymond Chandler's hard-boiled detective meets 1970s counterculture in Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye. Elliot Gould's Philip Marlowe mumbles through supermarket cat food runs and Malibu Noir, chain-smoking in a Hawaiian shirt instead of a trench coat. Altman instructed Gould to treat the script as jazz. Play the notes, then riff. Screenwriter Lee Brackett, who wrote The Big Sleep, updated her own dialogue, peppering it with Stone Surfer slang. Principal photography sprawled across Los Angeles' changeover era. Neon flicker of the Hollywood 24-hour newsstand, the deco apartments of High Tower Court, and an unfinished Century City high-rise for the bloody climax. Cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond used pre-flashed film stock to desaturate colors, creating a hazy smog veil. John Williams composed a single theme that morphs. Lounge piano, mariachi band, doorbell jingle, like Marlowe himself drifting through social strata. Studios panicked at test screenings. One executive demanded Marlowe wear a suit. Marketing budgets shrank, and U.S. gross eked $1 million. In Paris, however, Cahiers du Cinéma critics hailed it the definitive post-noir. Quentin Tarantino features it at every New Beverly Theater detective night, arguing it proves remakes can honor and subvert. Watch for cameos. A debuting Arnold Schwarzenegger flexes silently as a mob enforcer, and screen legend Jim Bouton improvises the classic line, "Nobody cares who killed the chauffeur." The film's subtlest joke, every clock sits at 3 a.m., Altman's nod to Marlowe's timeless dislocation. Recent Blu-ray sales surged after Knives Out director Rian Johnson cited it as a key influence on Benoit Blanc's meandering drawl. Philip Marlowe used to knock perps over the head. Here, he navigates yoga classes and psychedelic neighbors. Ready to warp time even harder, our next pick sends H.G. Wells sprinting after Jack the Ripper through 70s San Francisco. Time After Time, 1979. What if visionary author H.G. Wells actually built the time machine he imagined, only to chase Jack the Ripper into disco-era San Francisco? That mashup fuels Nicholas Meyer's Time After Time. Malcolm McDowell dials down his Clockwork Orange menace to play the earnest, bespectacled Wells. David Warner slithers as the Ripper, using Wells' brass and chrome contraption to escape 1893 London. Warner's Ripper prowls a Fisherman's Wharf cinema, showing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Meyer's jab that modern violence outpaces Victorian nightmares. Production designer Edward Carfagno, as Ben-Hur veteran, crafted the ornate time machine with rotating gyroscopes and red velvet seatbelts. It cost $250,000 and weighed nearly a ton, requiring reinforced flooring at Paramount's Stage 5. Budget hovered around $7 million, bolstered by product placement from major airline TWA for pivotal airport scenes. Filming exterior chase sequences on Market Street proved hairy. Flash crowds gathered to gawk at McDowell in period tales, forcing security to form human barricades while cable cars clanged by. Composer Miklos Raza, nearing retirement, melded sweeping romantic strings with ticking pocket watch percussion. Opening weekend landed 5th at the box office. Final domestic gross of $13 million qualified as modest, but VHS rentals made it a perennial weekend pick for sci-fi buffs. Legacy. The film birthed the oft-imitated historical figure versus serial killer in modern city trope, echoed in shows like Sleepy Hollow. Star Trek VI director Meyer reused gags from his own film, including a "Trust me, I'm a doctor" wink. And note the cameo, Corey Feldman, age 5, appears in the museum scene clutching a toy dinosaur. Time After Time's sweet center is Wells' romance with bank employee Amy, whose feminist wit dismantles his Victorian chauvinism. Their on-screen chemistry spilled into real life. The pair married the following year. Assault on Precinct 13, 1976. John Carpenter had $100,000, a handful of Steadicam tricks, and an urge to channel Hawk's Rio Bravo into urban Los Angeles. The result? Assault on Precinct 13, where a soon-to-be decommissioned station becomes Alamo-style fortress against a near-mythic street gang. Carpenter wrote, directed, edited, and composed the synth score in 8 months flat. To stretch film stock, he shot action scenes twice, one wide, one close, then cut them together as if using multi-camera coverage. The infamous ice cream truck scene almost didn't happen. Financiers feared backlash, So Carpenter offered to film two versions. His unflinching take stayed, instantly earning cult notoriety. Austin Stoker, a blaxploitation veteran, played Officer Ethan Bishop with stoic gravitas, while Darwin Jostin delivered sardonic one-liners as death row inmate Napoleon Wilson got a smoke, improvised during rehearsal. Night exteriors were actually daytime. Cinematographer Douglas Knapp used heavy ND filters and sodium vapor gels, cutting lighting costs. U.S. critics dismissed the film as exploitation fodder. Domestic gross barely covered prints. Then, the 1977 London Film Festival hailed it as American Nightmare Realism, prompting a British reissue that earned the States. Carpenter's minimalist score, 6-note bass line, pulsing hi-hat, found second life sampled by Africa Bambaataa and Public Enemy. A 2005 remake with Ethan Hawke proved the template timeless. Watch the gang's hair-raising deliberate silence. Carpenter instructed extras to avoid dialogue, crafting villains more like Romero zombies than street thugs. Bullet impacts were achieved by renting police surplus vests, padding them with squib packs. Carpenter labeled it blood ballet on a shoestring. Today, film school syllabi cited as textbook siege structure, bridging Western, horror, and action. But before you catch your breath, let's hitch a ride with three sailors savoring one last bender. The Last Detail, 1973. Nicest move you'll ever make is getting out of the Navy. So declares Billy Badass Badusky, as he and fellow shore patrol lifer mule escort kleptomaniac Sailor Meadows to military prison. Hal Ashby directs Robert Towne's profanity-laced script, over 340 swear words, a record at the time, capturing train car booze runs, snowy D.C. brawls, and a cathartic visit to a Virginia brothel. Shot sequentially across East Coast locations on a $2.3 million budget, the production faced Navy resistance. Real sailors were forbidden from wearing uniforms near filming. Solution? Costume designer William Lewis uncovered surplus pea coats at a Halifax thrift shop, achieving threadbare authenticity. Nicholson insisted on rehearsing by downing real Seagrams during bar scenes. Continuity supervisor kept whiskey levels identical with clever tea substitutes. When Columbia Pictures slapped an X rating for language, Ashby appealed, screening the climactic "I am the mother-lovin' shore patrol" scene to the board. They relented, granting an R box office haul of $10 million wasn't blockbuster territory, but cemented Nicholson's superstar status and netted Oscar nods for all three leads. Towne later recycled its bittersweet camaraderie into Chinatown's darker undertones. Look for a young Michael Chapman operating Steadicam before he shot Taxi Driver. Ashby's handheld 16mm inserts, filmed surreptitiously inside real O'Rourke's bar patrons, blur docu-reality with narrative. Modern critics treasure Meadows' doomed innocence. Richard Linklater called it the spiritual predecessor to Before Sunrise. Linklater's 2017 Last Flag. Flying functions as an unofficial sequel, even mirroring the Bridgeguard handoff. Ashby leaves no moral ribbon. Authority stifles, friendship flickers, and the Navy's gray steel marches on. Feeling that existential hangover? Worry not. We're entering a radioactive wasteland where wishes can kill. Stalker, 1779. Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker beckons with the promise of a room that grants your deepest desire. If you can survive the zone, a quarantined landscape where earthly physics collapses. Tarkovsky spent 2 years filming around Tallinn's abandoned hydroelectric plants, flooding ruined initial footage, forcing a costly reshoot that doubled the budget to nearly 1 million rubles, and poisoned crew members with chemical runoff. Lead actor Anatoly Solonitsyn even developed lung cancer attributed to on-site toxins. The director banned storyboards, choreographing labyrinthine tracking shots by memory. Cinematographer Alexander Knyazhinsky deployed a custom-rail dolly submerged in ankle-deep water to create liquid-smooth camera drift. Eduard Artemyev's score fuses Soviet-era ionospheric synth with Armenian duduk woodwind, reverberating like alien prayer. Every sound, distant foghorns, dripping tunnels, was recorded EMOS, then rebuilt in post, heightening unreality. Soviet censors labeled the 163-minute cut too mystical. Tarkovsky shaved it to 161, Adding Bible quotes to placate ideology, watch Dogs. Domestic release underperformed. Bootleg VHS copies, subtitled by hand, circulated among Western sci-fi devotees, influencing everything from the Stalker video game franchise to Alex Garland's Annihilation. Today it's the highest-rated film on Letterboxd's Mind-Bender tag. Scholars parse its metaphors: Cold War exclusion zones, artistic pilgrimage, or spiritual descent. Tarkovsky offered only this: cinema is a means to pray. Note the subtle shift from sepia to saturated color upon entering the zone, a reversal of Wizard of Oz's reveal, implying reality is drab, transcendence vivid. The film's final shot of a child telekinetically sliding glass across a table remains ambiguous: miracle or coincidence. Viewers report hypnagogic after effects, the feeling of leaving the theater yet remaining inside the zone. Ready for something more swashbuckling? Lace your boots. We're riding with Connery and Kane to crown ourselves kings. The Man Who Would Be King, 1975. John Huston dreamt of adapting Rudyard Kipling's colonial cautionary tale as early as 1950, eyeing Bogart and Gable as leads. 25 years later, he finally mounted the epic with Sean Connery and Michael Caine portraying Peachy Carnahan and Daniel Dravot, ex-soldiers who march into remote Kafiristan, determined to rule like gods. Shot across Morocco's Tadra Gorge and the Atlas Mountains on an $8.5 million budget, Huston wrangled 800 camels, 400 horses, and thousands of Berber tribesmen extras, many of whom had never seen a movie camera. Weather tantrums battered the shoot. A freak sandstorm buried the set village, prompting art director Alexandra Trauner to rebuild walls overnight. Costumes combine genuine Afghan chainmail with spray-painted football shoulder pads. A secret Connery jokes, "Save my collarbone." Composer Maurice Jarre recorded percussive scores on goatskin drums sourced locally, blending seamlessly with fife renditions of The Minstrel Boy, reinforcing the imperial juxtaposition. Opening opposite Jaws, the film posted modest domestic returns of $11 million, but earned glowing critical praise. Pauline Kael lauded Connery's career-best vulnerability. It scored 4 Oscar nominations, though Huston lost Best Adapted Screenplay to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Over time, Adventurers adopted its cautionary motto, "Damn the odds, we're British." Software entrepreneurs even cited as parable for startup hubris. Look closely at the closing scene. Kipling, played by Christopher Plummer, clutches Dravot's mummified head, whose crown hides a real taxidermied scorpion, a Hustonin joke about poisoned ambition. Director Guillermo del Toro calls the film a bridge between Lawrence of Arabia and Indiana Jones, its male-bonding tragedy echoing in buddy epics from Butch and Sundance to The Revenant. 15 vault-door movies, 15 electric jolts from cinema's most unruly decade. We've tangoed with kangaroos at dawn, hitched rides on dynamite trucks, whispered through bugged phone lines, and crowned ourselves kings, only to tumble from every perch. Now, Sin Explorer, the reel passes to you. Which hidden marvel will ignite your next movie night? Sound off in the comments, smash that, like if your mind just expanded, and hitch your fortunes to Golden Age classics by tapping subscribe and ringing that bell. Fresh dives into forgotten brilliance drop every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss the next celluloid secret we drag into the spotlight. Until then, keep the projector whirring and the curiosity blazing.